People down here love Hank Williams.
Let's revisit this gem of a moment on ESPN, shall we?
And what people down here don't like are people like Dave Zirin making idiotic statements about country music songs that Hank Williams has written. I've respected Dave for a long time, but I think the statement he made today is the single stupidest I've ever heard in the history of this program.
It was the answer he gave Monday morning on Fox and Friends that may have cost him that job when he compared President Obama to Hitler.
You mean when John Boehner played golf with President Obama?
Oh, yeah.
What did you not like about it?
Come on. It'd be like Hitler playing golf with Netanyahu.
Thus, it prompted a discussion on ESPN. Previously, Zirin made some fair points about how Williams should have never had the opportunity in the first place, citing his support for the Confederacy, not to mention a song titled "If the South Would Have Won," which Zirin referenced specifically.
Well, it's a slap in the face to country music, because it's a stereotype about country music that everybody who's involved in it believes in the Confederate flag, believes in oppressing people, and believes in the idea that comparing the president
Dave,
to Adolf Hitler is somehow a good thing.
You don't know what you're talking about.
This would be Finebaum for the next 30 seconds or so, cutting off Zirin and not allowing him to speak. Then, Bomani Jones weighed in.
There's actually a large African-American population in the South, too, Paul. You might want to think about them as you talk about the South.
No kidding.
The problem with the song "If the South Would Have Won" is that there's not a single mention of black people anywhere in the entire song when you listen to it. It is a Southern utopia, and you would have no idea black people ever existed in that song. So I don't find that statement necessarily to be ridiculous that he made. He is absolutely a representative of the brand in this example, and he has attached himself very publicly to some politics that a lot of people find offensive and that a lot of people find to be extreme. And just because a lot of people in Alabama might be on the same side of those politics does not mean that they are any less extreme or offensive to some people. And when you call the president of the United States, quote, the enemy, and that is a part that Hank Williams Jr. never fell back from, then we do have a problem.
Bomani makes his points concise and sound. One would seem to think, pretty reasonable, right? To Paul Finebaum, absolutely not. And this is where it takes a really, really far right turn, courtesy of Finebaum himself.
First of all, my parents are from New York. I happen to be Jewish. I lost relatives in the Holocaust, so I don't need Dave Zirin or Bomani Jones lecturing me on my background and my culture. I live in the South, and I'm proud of it. And I happened to go to a concert a couple of weeks ago that raised $3 million for people in this state who lost everything in a tornado. And Darius Rucker was there. He happens to be an African-American. You know that, Bomani. And I'm just sick and tired of people from elsewhere, whether they're in Charlotte or anywhere else, making fun of people down here.
Look at Jones's face after Paul's, "Hey, there was a black man at a thing I went to, Bomani, you know him?" After this aired, Jones would write on his website, "I made a series of facial expressions that make any further explanation unnecessary. Sorry, but I can't play off crazy. I have an attuned ear for crazy because crazy scares me. I stay on guard for crazy. So I heard crazy and reacted as I typically do, as if I just heard something crazy."
These are good people. They're not racist. They're not bigots. They just happen to like country music.
Excuse me. Paul, you are not any more Southern than me. I was born in Atlanta. I grew up in Texas. I don't feel the need to prove that. I haven't made any jokes about anybody from Alabama. My mother has lived in Alabama for the last 15 years.
You're the one who just talked about black people down here, not me.
No, I'm talking about that song, which doesn't have a single mention of any black people in it, and is cast as a utopia, which is part of this neo-Confederate thing that Hank Williams has had going for a while. The problem with neo-Confederacy is that so much of it popped up right around segregation, as you had a resistance toward that. But nobody is insulting the people in Alabama. I'm talking specifically about Hank Williams Jr., and please do not misrepresent me as saying anything bad about my mother's friends.
Just a quick interjection from myself. I think what Paul Finebaum is doing is very, very wrong. I personally think it's a losing argument to pivot and then make yourself the victim. Instead, as we witnessed, he dug himself a deeper hole. HuffPo wrote Finebaum went completely off topic, perhaps illustrating how personally so many people around the country have taken Williams' firing at the time. Finebaum brought up the fact that his parents are from New York and he has relatives who died in the Holocaust. Both Jones and Zirin pointed out that Finebaum's background had nothing to do with the subject of the discussion.
Paul, that's an outrageous statement. I mean, if you want to talk about my relatives that died in the Holocaust or my time in the South, we could do that. That's not germane to this discussion at all, and frankly, it's cheap and unprofessional to bring that into this discussion, especially trying to hear you talk about Darius Rucker. I mean, that's nothing to do with this.
You're lecturing me on what's unprofessional, Dave?
Let me finish.
Give me a break,
Paul,
okay, buddy?
Yeah, I am. Paul, seriously, why don't you do a Google search of Hank Williams Jr. Confederacy and see what comes up? It is a cottage industry of Hank Williams Jr. and the Stars and Bars.
Dave. I don't need to do a Google search. I can call him up on the phone, and I know what he stands for. He's a country music entertainer. You get that, entertainer?
First off, this is not a guy one should gloat of being friends with. After all, at one show, he rambled in a god-awful, patronizing caricature of an African-American man with Confederate flags present. As a matter of fact, those flags were made available for sale at his show for $20 a pop. He despised America's first black president and gave quotes like the one you see on your screen. It says something about the company you keep. Whether Paul has broken off or not, at the time of this taping, this is not a friendship to gloat about. I doubled down on that. One writer, Charles Tanzer, noted a song of Williams Jr.'s called "A Country Boy Can Survive." The lyrics read as follows: "The preacher man says it's the end of time, and the Mississippi River, she's a-goin' dry. The interest is up and the stock market's down, and you only get mugged if you go downtown." Hank Williams Jr. is essentially referring in code to the evil Jewish money changers from biblical times with his reference to interest rates in the stock market. Just awful, hateful stuff. He tops it off with a line about getting mugged if you go downtown, a clear reference to getting mugged by a black person in an inner city, the ultimate fear of middle class and suburban white folks in the crime-ridden 1980s.
For us to limit this and say, hey, well, Hank Williams Jr., he's just an entertainer, then why was he speaking in a context that is not? No, he was not speaking as an entertainer. He wasn't on country music television. He wasn't on MTV. He was on Fox News.
Have you ever watched Fox News? What's wrong with stating your political opinion?
Well, Paul, that's my question to you.
Just so happens you two guys don't agree with it, and then you start hiding behind all these elitist attitudes, which people from the South are sick of, okay?
Paul, let me jump in with a question for you.
I'm as Southern as you are.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Jones would write afterwards, "I am incensed by people who have made whiteness part and parcel of being Southern. After all, how could the Stars and Bars be defended as Southern culture without taking black people totally out of the equation? To be told I'm not a Southerner by a man who has never met me, who then didn't listen when I told him where I was from, and remarked, 'Yeah, right,' when I said he was no more Southern than him, and for the record, nobody in my family is from no damn New York. Yes, it does make me angry, and it angers me because I love the South like nobody's business. I've never lived north of I-40. I clown Southerners who wear Yankees hats, for God's sake, yet forever and ever, when I see representations of the South on television, it's nothing but a bunch of white dudes. When it's time to get a Southern perspective on things, you think anybody's going to call me? The Old South isn't just the Stars and Bars, seersucker suits, and bluegrass or whatever else. It's also people who look like me, white t-shirts, jazz, and Outkast. We are here too. We are here in larger numbers. We are Southern, and we are disregarded by the people who claim to love the South the most. On top of that, we are American, and given how many people remove us from their idea of America and the South, it's pretty friggin' insulting that so many of those same people have the audacity to question the patriotism of the president, me, or anyone else. He was talking about Obama there. But when I emphatically say that I am Southern and, by simple extension, American, I am told, "Yeah, right." It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it tells me what time it is. I deserve much better than that, Mr. Finebaum.